Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something today that may change how you look at the closed doors in your life. You weren't rejected. God redirected you. That job you didn't get, that relationship that didn't work out, that opportunity that slipped through your fingers, it wasn't the end, it was a redirection. It was heaven's hand pulling you off a road that would have led to destruction and placing you on the path of destiny. You see, we cry over what left us. We mourn what didn't work out. But while we were wiping our tears, God was paving a better road. A road you couldn't see. A road you wouldn't have chosen on your own. Oh, friend, don't you understand? God's no is often mercy. His silence is strategy. His delay is design. He is not punishing you. He is preparing you. Some of you have been asking, God, why did you let this happen? And the Lord is saying, I didn't reject you. I redirected you because I love you too much to let you settle for less than my best. Think about Joseph, rejected by his brothers, sold into slavery, thrown into prison. But was he rejected? No, he was redirected to the palace. God turned every setback into a setup. What they meant for evil, God meant for good. Look at Moses. He thought he was done after fleeing Egypt. But God said, I'm not through with you. You're not in exile. You're in training. God will take your wilderness and turn it into a launching pad. Paul wanted to preach in Asia, but God shut the door. Why? Because there was a man in Macedonia praying for help. God redirected Paul so he could reach the one who needed him most. So if God closed a door in your life, shout hallelujah. If he took something away, give him glory. Because if you lost it, you didn't need it. If it walked away, it wasn't part of the promise. If it crumbled, it couldn't carry the weight of your calling. You've been looking at rejection as failure. But from heaven's perspective, it's favor. God is too wise to make a mistake and too loving to abandon you. You weren't rejected, you were rescued. You weren't cast away, you were called higher. You weren't forgotten, you were favored for a greater path. So today, hold your head up, wipe the dust off your feet, and walk forward in faith. Because where God is taking you is far greater than where you thought you'd go. You weren't rejected. God redirected you. And his way is always better. Rejection is often protection in disguise. Sometimes the very thing we were praying for, crying out for, and chasing after with all our strength is the thing God knew would harm us more than help us. We see the surface, we see what glitters, what looks good, what feels right in the moment, but God sees the end from the beginning. He sees the traps behind the smile, the heartbreak behind the excitement, the destruction hidden beneath the opportunity. And in his mercy, he steps in. He closes the door. He allows it to fall apart. And while we may feel like we've lost, what we've really received is his covering. It hurts in the moment. We feel abandoned, overlooked, unwanted. But later, when the fog clears and the truth is revealed, we often look back and say, thank God that didn't work out. Because his no was not a punishment. It was a shield. It was his way of pulling us out of harm's way, even if we didn't understand it. When you're walking with God, rejection is never random. It's not failure. It's not the end. It's divine redirection wrapped in what feels like disappointment. But underneath it all, it's love. Deep, protective, fatherly love. God's plans are higher. We make our plans with limited vision, based on what we know, what we feel, and what we can see right now. But God isn't limited by time or circumstance. He sees the whole picture, the past, the present, and the future all at once. What doesn't make sense to us makes perfect sense to him. While we're focused on the moment, he's working on eternity. While we're praying for the mountain to move, he might be building our strength to climb it. His ways don't always line up with our understanding, but they are always right, always perfect, always good. There are times when we beg God for something, thinking it will fulfill us, thinking it's the answer. But God knows what we can't yet see. He sees the consequences before we step into them. He knows what's waiting down that road. So when he leads us in a different direction, it's not because he's withholding something good. It's because he's preparing something better. His plans don't cater to comfort. They shape our character. They're designed not just to bless us, but to transform us. And the beauty of walking with him is that even when we don't understand, we can still trust. Because his thoughts are not our thoughts and his ways are not our ways. They are far above, far wiser, and always filled with purpose. Delayed answers are not denied promises. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. God is not in a hurry, and he is never late. He works in perfect timing, not according to our clocks or calendars, but according to his divine purpose. When we pray and don't see immediate results, it's easy to think God didn't hear us or that he's ignoring us, but heaven is not silent, it's strategic. God often uses the waiting season to refine us, to grow us, and to prepare us for what we're asking for. Sometimes we're not ready to carry the promise we're believing for. Sometimes the environment around us has to change. Sometimes God is aligning other people, other places, and other pieces that are part of the blessing. The delay isn't a denial, it's a process. And if we rush the process, we may end up with something less than God's best. But if we trust him in the waiting, if we stay faithful even when it's hard, we will see the promise fulfilled in a way that exceeds our expectations. The Bible is full of people who waited. Abraham waited decades for Isaac. Joseph endured years of trials before the palace. And even Jesus waited 30 years before starting his ministry. Delay did not mean God had forgotten. It meant the promise was maturing. So if you're in a season where it feels like God is taking too long, hold on. Don't give up. What he promised, he will perform. The wait is not a waste. It's part of the testimony. Trust over understanding. There are times when life doesn't make sense. The path ahead is unclear. The reasons for our struggles are hidden, and we're left with more questions than answers. In those moments, the temptation is strong to lean on our own understanding, to try to figure it all out, to wrestle with why things are happening the way they are. But God calls us to something greater. He calls us to trust. Trust that he knows what he's doing, even when we don't. Faith isn't always about understanding the why. Sometimes it's about trusting in the who. We may not always see the bigger picture, but God sees all of it. And he promises that he is working everything together for our good. Trusting in God means believing that even when the path doesn't make sense, he's still leading us to something better. His wisdom is far beyond ours, and his plans are perfect, even when they seem like they're taking us in the opposite direction. When we trust, we surrender the need to have all the answers. We stop trying to control the outcome and let God be God. We walk forward not because we understand everything, but because we believe in the one who holds our future. Trust over understanding doesn't mean abandoning our questions, but it means choosing faith over fear, peace over panic, and obedience over doubt. In the end, God will reveal his purpose, and when he does, we will see that the trust we placed in him was never misplaced. Every no from the world may be a yes from heaven. We live in a world that often measures success by what we can attain, what we can achieve, and what others approve of. We chase after approval from bosses, friends, family, and society, thinking that their yes will bring us fulfillment. But the reality is that what the world values may not always align with what God knows we need. Sometimes the doors that are closed in our lives are actually the very protection we need to stay on the path God has prepared for us. When the world says no, it might be because God has something better in store, something more aligned with his purpose for our lives. That no could be a redirection, a shield that keeps us from walking into situations that might harm us, or an opportunity that would take us away from his best. The world's no might be a clear indication that God is saving us for something greater. When man closes a door, it's often because God is opening a far better one. The truth is, God's approval matters far more than the world's. While we strive to meet the expectations of others, God's yes over our lives is the only one that truly matters. And when he says yes, there's no force in heaven or on earth that can stop it. His plan for us is always for our good, even when it doesn't look the way we expect. So when the world rejects you, remember that God is saying yes to something far greater. His plan is never to harm you. It is to give you a hope and a future. Trust that even when things don't go as you had imagined, he is still in control and leading you to his best. God uses disappointment to build our dependence on him. There are times when life doesn't go the way we expect and the things we've placed our hope in seem to fall apart. We experience heartache, frustration, and the deep pain of unmet expectations. In those moments, it can feel like the ground beneath us is shaking and the security we once felt is slipping away. But what we often don't realize is that God is using these moments of disappointment to draw us closer to himself. When everything is going well, it's easy to feel self-sufficient, to believe we can handle things on our own. But God knows that real growth happens when we realize that we can't do it all by ourselves. Disappointment forces us to look up, to look to him for the strength and guidance we need. It's in our moments of brokenness that we begin to understand how much we truly need him. He allows disappointment not to destroy us, but to reshape our hearts, to remind us that our ultimate source of strength, peace, and provision is found in him alone. Through disappointment, God teaches us to trust his timing, his wisdom, and his perfect plan. When the doors we hope for remain closed, it's an invitation to lean into his will, knowing that his ways are higher than ours. He takes our shattered expectations and turns them into opportunities for deeper intimacy with him. In the midst of the struggle, he is building a foundation of faith that is stronger, more enduring, and more reliant on him. So, while disappointment is never easy, it's often the very thing that leads us back to the heart of God. It reminds us that we are not in control, but he is, and that is the best place to be. Through these moments, we learn to surrender, to trust, and to depend fully on the one who holds our future in his hands. Redirection leads to greater purpose. Life doesn't always unfold the way we expect it to. We set our plans, chart our course, and envision the future we believe is meant for us. But then suddenly, things change. Doors close, paths are blocked, and the journey we thought was ours takes an unexpected turn. It can be easy to feel lost, discouraged, and uncertain, questioning whether we've made the right choices or wondering if we've missed something along the way. Yet in the midst of the change, God may be orchestrating something far greater than we could have imagined. When God redirects us, it is not a setback, it is a realignment with his divine purpose for our lives. What may seem like a detour is often the very route he is leading us down to fulfill the destiny he has designed for us. Just because things don't go according to our plan doesn't mean that they are off course in his plan. God's direction is always filled with purpose. Even when it's not immediately clear to us, what seems like a failure or missed opportunity may be the key that unlocks a much bigger door, a door that leads to greater growth, greater influence, and a deeper relationship with him. Redirection might be uncomfortable. It might bring us through seasons of waiting, and it might require us to release our own desires in exchange for his will. But in the end, God's purpose for us is always greater than anything we could have planned on our own. Through redirection, he teaches us trust, patience, and obedience, molding us into the people we need to be to walk into the full purpose he has for us. The journey might look different from what we expected, but that doesn't mean it's any less meaningful. God's plan is always one of hope, and his redirection is an invitation to trust that the best is yet to come. Biblical examples prove it. Throughout Scripture, we see time and time again how God redirected the lives of his people, not to cause harm, but to fulfill his greater purpose. Take Joseph, for instance. He had dreams of greatness, visions of being honored by his family, yet instead of being elevated, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned. It seemed like his dreams were shattered, but in reality it was God's hand at work, guiding him through every hardship. Joseph's redirection led him to a position of power in Egypt, where he was able to save his family and an entire nation from famine. What seemed like rejection and injustice was in fact God's plan to elevate him for a greater purpose. Then there's Moses. He was born in a time when his people were enslaved in Egypt, and his life was spared only through a miraculous act of God. But when Moses tried to take matters into his own hands, he ended up fleeing into the wilderness after killing an Egyptian. For 40 years he lived as a shepherd in the desert, far removed from the calling he had once felt. But God had a greater plan. His redirection of Moses was not a detour, it was preparation. When the time was right, God called Moses from the burning bush to lead his people out of slavery and into the promised land. What seemed like wasted years in exile were actually God's training ground for one of the greatest acts of deliverance in biblical history. Consider the Apostle Paul. Before his conversion, he was Saul, a man who persecuted Christians with fervor, believing he was defending the faith. But on the road to Damascus, God intervened and redirected his life. Saul's encounter with Jesus completely changed the course of his destiny. He went from being a fierce opponent of the gospel to one of its most powerful proponents. Through his redirection, Paul wrote much of the New Testament and spread the message of Christ far and wide. His life proves that a redirection from God is never a dead end. It's the beginning of something greater than we could have ever imagined. Even Jesus himself experienced redirection in his earthly ministry. When he came to earth, many expected the Messiah to establish a political kingdom, to overthrow the Roman oppressors and reign as a powerful ruler. But Jesus' purpose was far different. He didn't come to be a political leader. He came to lay down his life for the salvation of the world. His path was a redirection, one that led him to the cross, where he fulfilled the ultimate plan of redemption. His redirection was the key to our salvation, showing us that sometimes God's plan is greater than our human expectations. These examples and many more throughout the Bible show us that when God redirects us, it's always with a purpose in mind. What feels like a setback or disappointment is often his way of preparing us for something greater, something that will bring glory to his name and advance his kingdom. God's plan is perfect, and though we may not understand it in the moment, the Bible assures us that his ways are always higher than ours, and his redirection is always for our good. The enemy may try to use rejection for harm, but God turns it for good. Rejection, when it comes, can feel like a deep wound, a personal attack, or an unfair blow to our self-worth. The enemy wants to use that moment of hurt to plant seeds of doubt, bitterness, and discouragement in our hearts. He wants us to believe that we are not enough, that we've been abandoned, or that God has somehow failed us. In those moments, the enemy would love nothing more than for us to turn inward, to question our value, and to feel defeated. But God, in his infinite wisdom and love, takes what the enemy intends for harm and turns it into something that works for our good. Where the world sees rejection, God sees an opportunity for growth, for dependence on him, and for a deeper revelation of his purpose in our lives. What the enemy meant to break us, God uses to build us up. He uses rejection to refine our character, to strengthen our faith, and to deepen our trust in his plan. God's ability to turn rejection into a redirection or even a blessing is a testament to his sovereignty and his goodness. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph said to his brothers who had rejected and betrayed him, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's story is a powerful example of how God can take the deepest wounds of rejection and use them for his greater purposes. What was meant to destroy him was the very thing God used to position him for influence, to fulfill his destiny, and to save an entire nation. Jesus too faced the ultimate rejection. He was betrayed by one of his closest disciples, abandoned by his followers, mocked, and ultimately crucified. The enemy thought he had won, The rejection was complete. The victory seemed to belong to the powers of darkness. But God, in his perfect plan, took that rejection and transformed it into the greatest act of love and salvation the world has ever known. The cross, a symbol of ultimate rejection, became the means of redemption for all of humanity. In our own lives, when we face rejection, we can remember that God is always at work behind the scenes. He has the power to take what seems like a loss and turn it into a lesson, a setback into a setup for something greater. The enemy may try to use rejection to define us, but God will always use it to refine us. He will take what was meant to harm us and shape it into something that works for our good, building us up, strengthening our faith, and aligning us more closely with his will. So when rejection comes, hold on to the truth that God is with you and he is turning it for good. Keep moving in faith. Life often presents us with challenges, setbacks, and times when it feels like we've been left standing still, unsure of where to go next. There are moments when the road ahead seems unclear, when the obstacles seem insurmountable, and when the temptation to give up is strong. But in those moments, the call is clear: keep moving in faith. Faith is not just about what we believe when things are going well. It's about what we believe when the road is rough, the circumstances are hard, and the answers don't come quickly. Faith is taking the next step, even when we don't have all the answers. It's about trusting God even when we can't see how he's going to work things out. The key is not to wait until everything makes sense or to stop when we face a struggle. It's to keep moving forward, one step at a time, trusting that God is with us every step of the way. It's about putting one foot in front of the other, even when we can't see the whole path. God doesn't ask us to have it all figured out. He asks us to trust him and keep moving forward, believing that he is working behind the scenes, even when we don't understand. Every step we take in faith is an act of obedience, an expression of trust in God's plan, even when it feels like we're walking in the unknown. When we keep moving, we are actively participating in the work God is doing in us and through us. It's in those moments of movement, of pressing forward despite uncertainty, that God refines our character, strengthens our faith, and brings us closer to the destiny he has for us. God promised in his word that he would never leave us or forsake us. When we keep moving in faith, we are acknowledging that promise. Even in the toughest times, we are choosing to believe that God is faithful, that he is leading us, and that he will bring us through whatever challenges we face. Faith is not passive, it's active, dynamic, and requires action. It's not enough to simply believe that God is able. We must act on that belief, trusting him with every step. So when the road is tough and the challenges are overwhelming, remember this: don't stop moving. Don't let fear or doubt paralyze you. Keep moving in faith, knowing that God is with you, that he is guiding you, and that every step you take in faith brings you closer to his purpose for your life. He is faithful to complete the work he has started in you, and he will lead you to where you need to be. Let us remember that every trial, every rejection, and every moment of uncertainty is not an end, but a part of God's divine plan to shape us, strengthen us, and lead us toward the greater purpose he has for our lives. Rejection may feel like a setback, but in his hands, it becomes a redirection. Disappointment is never wasted. God uses it to build our trust and dependence on him. The world may say no, but God says yes to the greater things he has in store. When we are called to move in faith, we don't move by sight or understanding, but by the unshakable belief that he is with us, guiding us every step of the way. Keep moving forward. Don't let rejection or disappointment define you. Trust in God's plan, knowing that his purpose is greater than anything we can imagine. His ways are higher, his timing is perfect, and his promises are sure. Step into the unknown with faith, because with God, every step is a step towards something greater. You are not alone in this journey. He is faithful, he is powerful, and he is working all things together for your good. Keep moving, keep trusting. And watch how God turns every no into a yes that leads you to your divine